Oh, yeah. Here we go. Larry Krueger, the guest on OT with BP. We're going overtime on the San Francisco 49ers draft, and we're talking sleepers today. I can't wait to get into this one. You guys know Larry Krueger at Sports Larry K on Twitter. The Krug Show, you can hear him on local radio as well. The legendary local voice of Larry Krueger, talking 49ers, talking all other sports, but Larry gets granular. We were talking a lot. We pull the curtain back a little bit. We're going a little bit late here because we were just chopping up about everything off the air before we got going. We were supposed to go a little earlier, but we had fun talking about the business, talking about the radio biz that we both have graduated from. Larry, is what I consider it, because I love where I'm at right now. I love doing the podcast thing. Appreciate everybody jumping into the new channel I got going here, Overtime with Brian Peacock. And it's overtime because it's, I'm doing Locked On 49ers daily, and I want everybody to subscribe to Locked On 49ers as well as this channel. I love talking 49ers with Eric Crocker every single day, but sometimes there's more, and there's some spillage, and I want to catch all of that, and I want to have a little fun, get a little loose. It's cocktail hour. It's Friday night. I've got one here. Larry, I don't know if you've got a beverage going right now.
I'm always working water because I'm trying to drop some LBs. I was 250 pounds with the Super Bowl, and I've never been 250 pounds in my life. And I was like, dude, I got to drop some LBs. So I'm down to 225. I'm drinking water, and I'm trying to get down to 210 by training camp.
Yeah, I just tell people I'm converting to tight end because that's kind of what's happening to me. It's just creeping up on me, and it has been since the pandemic. You get that quarantine 15, thought it would go away quickly, hasn't gone away. In fact, it might have grown a little bit, so I'm kind of in the same boat. I'm trying to be a good boy. Brian Peacock at BD Peacock on Twitter. Larry Krueger at Sports Larry K on Twitter. Larry, nobody loves undrafted free agents more than you. You talked about body composition just now. It's a big part of scouting. I think before we get going, I want to ask you about where you came from, because there's a reason you love talking about late round sleepers, and you talking about the bubble on a sixth round defensive tackle, right? And we're talking arm length, we're talking hand size. You got to get granular when you're a former NFL scout, and you did this, so that's why you love doing it, and that's why I love talking with you. And so we're going to talk a little bit about some late round sleepers today. Can you tell the folks how you came about with the scouting background and how that transitioned into radio for you?
Well, I mean, I played a little bit of high school football, but just for a year. And, I wasn't like I loved playing it. I played basketball. I played lacrosse. I wanted to play in lacrosse at Sac State. And a buddy of mine was in my fraternity in college. And his dad just happened to be the head coach for Sac State football, the late Bob Mattos, who I love like a brother. And, he said, "Hey, man, I'm teaching a class. It's coaching of football, and it's an upper division elective." And he heard me talking ball with his son one day, and he's like, "Dude, I think you ought to take my class." So I took his class, and I just read the Bill Walsh book on organizational football. And so, the final project was like, put together your organizational plan. And I put everything I had into it. Right. I think it was supposed to be 10 pages. I think my paper was like 28 pages. And he's like, "Oh, he gave me an A." And then he said, "Hey, I'm going to the Canadian Football League to scout for the Sacramento Gold Miners, which was the American expansion of the CFL. And it only lasted a couple of years." And I said, "Way to go, coach." And he'd been at Sac State for 27 years. He's like, "Hey, man, you're coming with me." I said, "What? You're coming? I'm coming with you. What do you mean?" I go, "I don't know Canadian football." He's like, "You want to work in the NFL, right?" And I said, "Absolutely." And he's like, "Well, it's in total NFL staff. The former head coach of the Buffalo Bills, Case Stevenson, is the head coach. The former GM of the Eagles, Joe Woolley, is the general manager. Rick Mueller, who's Randy Mueller's brother, is going to be in charge of personnel. And I can get you an interview if you want." And I told my dad, and he's like, "Oh, are you kidding me? Go for it." And I said, "Dad, doesn't pay that well." He said, "I'll help you through it." And so he goes, "But you got to promise me one thing, boy. You better get there early and stay all day and put everything you've got into it." And I said, "Dad, I'll do it." And I thought I was working hard. I showed up at the facility at 7 a.m. I was leaving at like 5 p.m. And I realized that these guys show up at 5 a.m. and they stay there till midnight. And so it was like an education on what hard work really was. And so I started had the conversation with the head coach, and he's like, "Hey, man, if you're going to work with us, you got to work our hours." And it was a glimpse into how hard these guys worked. And so I started doing it, and I was the assistant linebacker coach. I was the assistant to the defensive coordinator. I was the assistant to the player personnel director, and I worked with all NFL people. And then a lot of these guys were between jobs in the NFL. They all wanted to get back to the NFL. So after a year, the team relocated to San Antonio, and they offered me an opportunity to go there. But the general manager, Joe Woolley, went to become Buddy Ryan's general manager of the Arizona Cardinals. And Joe took me with him. And so I scouted the West Coast for the Cardinals in the mid-'90s and, really enjoyed it. And then I got a kind of a glimpse into, I was the youngest guy. I was like 26, 27 years old. And, these guys were all in their 50s and 60s. And I just shut up and I learned a lot and I asked lots of questions and I worked tons of hours. But then I started looking at their lives and they all had divorces and, kids that they didn't know. And, it was just kind of it wasn't like what I had dreamed of as a family life. And so I kind of fell into the radio and decided to leave scouting in 1997 and pursue, a career at KMBR. And, so in my mind, I've always been doing like what I'm second best at. And, it's like my real passion is pro football personnel and my real passion is scouting and that's what I'm best at. And I just tried to make the radio thing work as long as I could. And it helped me raise, 4 kids of my own. My daughter's in med school. My son's at Cal Poly. I got another son going to college next year. I got a son starting high school. So, I got a chance to be a part of their lives, and radio was an avenue to be able to be in sports and still be part of their lives. But, Brian, I got to be honest. It's like, I really, it's not that I haven't liked being on the radio, but it's not really what my dream was, and so now I'm doing my own YouTube channel and I can kind of marry my two loves, which is player personnel and football evaluation and covering football. And now getting and then doing working in pro football has given me an opportunity to I know what the pro football process is. I know how to watch film. I know how to break it down. I know how to do all the things. I know what the Niners are doing in their meetings and what they're discussing and what Shanahan's doing and what quality control does. I was essentially quality control. That was kind of one of my jobs in the Canadian League. And so now it's like I feel like I've got the best of both worlds. I'm doing some football broadcast. I get to go into the locker room and talk to the players and talk to Shanahan and talk to Lynch. I know their process, so I feel like I can kind of get on their level. And then, every year come draft time, I'm watching lots of film and kind of living. I don't want to say living vicariously because I'm just doing what I love to do, but I'm getting to enjoy that personnel evaluation side that I missed out on all those years. So it's been a thrill. I love talking to people and I love watching football and I love breaking down personnel, and I'm doing all of it right now.
Absolutely. And that's what I'm doing here on this channel too. So we're going to have fun getting into those prospects real quick on the scouting life. I remember being told a long time ago, because that was a path that I thought I might want to try to take. You start giving away your time for free to hope that someone gives you a chance to be 25 and 25 is what I was told. You find a 25-year-old scout, they make $25K a year and they spend 25 days at home, with their family. And it's like, maybe talking about it on the radio might be a better life for me than spending all of my time in Casper, Wyoming, or whatever town I'm in, getting a hotel trying to break down film and break down these prospects to hope I can climb the chain to eventually, be divorced and be an executive in the NFL. It's a tough life. It's a grind. And I can imagine what it's like in these buildings because everyone's competitive and it's just like, you can't go home till the next guy goes home. So nobody goes home all day long.
Oh man. I mean, I literally slept at the facility. I had a bunk. I'd get there. the defensive coordinator, Bill Urbanic, the late Bill Urbanic, would pick me up at he'd be like, he goes, I'll pick you up at 1:45. And I'm like, quarter to what? He's like, 4:45. So he would pick me up at 4:45. I was still living with my college roommates. They were partying and, smoking weed and, taking mushrooms and drinking and partying. And it's like, I'd be like leaving for work at 4:45 and I'd be coming home at like 1:15. And then I would just be crashing out. And, it was a full day. We're watching film. My job was to basically sit there with the coaches, watch the film, take the film off into translate it into our language, and then break it all down in every way imaginable. What we're doing 1st and 10, what we're doing inside the 30, what we're doing backed up on our own goal line, and then I would fly ahead and look at the Canadian teams, Flutie, Calgary. Jeff Garcia was playing for Calgary at that time. So I would, and I just, and I would do it all. I mean, I would, watch film. Then I'm doing personnel evaluations. In the Canadian League, they have a thing called a negotiation list. And that's basically American players that you own the rights to. And so then you're always checking in to see if one of those guys on the negotiation list got cut. And then would they have interest in coming to Canada? And then I'm sitting there in meetings with the head coach. We do self-scout meetings. Now, Krug, I want you to tell us about our opponent. And an hour and a half from now, we're going to sit down for another hour and a half, and you're going to tell us about ourselves, what we do, what our tendencies are. Then we're having personnel meetings. Then we're going to practice. Then I'm lifting weights. Then I'm taking a nap. And, it's like I'm eating dinner at the facility. I've got late night meetings. I'm watching film till midnight. I mean, it was awesome. It was wild. I mean, my friends were like, dude, what happened to you, man? You used to party with us all the time. Where the fuck are you? I'm like, dude, I'm at work. My girlfriend's like, you don't have any time for me. I'm like, you're right. She broke up. Pretty much it was just like, I'm living the football life, and it was not conducive to having relationships of any kind with anybody. And I knew I wanted to have a wife and I wanted to have kids. So I knew I loved it, but I also knew that my first goal was to be like a husband and a father. And, I wanted to be like my dad, so
that's tough. My son just started T-ball. I can't imagine not being around for those types of things. That's tough, and you got to love it. And it is absolutely a grind, but we can still grind here, Larry. And I know you've been grinding the tape on these prospects for the 49ers. You talked a little bit about self-scouting there. When you look at what the 49ers roster looks like right now and what they've been setting up for during free agency before the draft, they've done a lot of work on the defensive side of the ball. Not big money, not huge money, but they've added a couple of defensive ends. They've replaced Eric Armstead at defensive tackle with a starting caliber player, Malik Collins, and they've added some short-term outside corners that have a lot of experience. Is that to you telling us that they're really want to work on the defense and they're going to continue to work on the defense in the draft? Or is that telling us, all right, we know we can play here. We know we can field a team the day before the draft if we need to. Now we're going best player available. Or are they telling us we're doing our work in free agency on defense so we can go hit the offense in the NFL draft?
It's really hard to say, Brian, because it's like, the last couple of years they've gone for like one major free agent, and that's kind of it. It was Mooney, it was Hargrave, and then they were going to do their work in the draft. I just think that right now they knew they had a bunch of needs. I mean, they had 6 or 7 free agents on the defensive line, and I knew a number of those guys were going to leave. So it doesn't surprise me that they've added, Floyd and Collins and, Elliott and Gross Matos. And, it's like they were going to add a bunch of guys. And then, I didn't, some of their moves have surprised me. I didn't see them signing Devondre Campbell, but they did. Isaac Yiadom is a guy that I really liked out of Boston College a few years ago. And he's coming off a real nice year with the Saints. That might be kind of a sleeper pickup. But I just think now it's like they've kind of got themselves in a spot where they can go and trade up for one guy if they want, because they've filled their needs. I mean, what are their needs right now? They've got all 3 quarterback spots taken, though I think they may still add another quarterback. We'll see how that goes. Pretty deep at running back. You've got, some tight ends. I mean, I think Cam Latu is going to be a whole lot better this summer than last summer. He was thinking way too much. It was causing him to drop the ball. He's kind of one of those guys that he was going to be he needed that redshirt year, but I think they're pretty good at tight end, though they probably could use somebody. They're decent at wide receiver if they keep their guys. Of course, the Ayuk thing kind of looms over it all. They're pretty loaded at running back. They're pretty loaded, except for what's their future at center? What's their future at right guard? Is it Burford or is it going to be somebody in this draft? And what's the future at right tackle? So they need to build out the offensive line. They still have some good depth there, but I think they want to have even better depth. I think they need 1 D tackle, 1 D end, 1 inside backer, true number 1 corner, couple safeties. So I think more of their needs, even though they spent a lot of money on defense, I still think they have needs on defense and obviously to rebuild the offensive line in what I think is an outstanding offensive line draft.
It's tough because everyone wants to tackle, right? And they brought everybody back. They even gave Colton McKivitz another year, but the money they gave Colton McKivitz to have another year on his contract is not the money you give to a starting offensive tackle. So that tells me they see him as a backup caliber player, because that's what he's being paid as. He's being paid like a swing tackle. And the fact that he's willing to take another year of that sort of pay tells me that he knows and his agent knows. They all kind of know where they're at now. He was a starter last year, and the 49ers were really good on offense. And we saw it with Aaron Banks. It's not that easy to jump in as a rookie in the NFL, especially on the offensive line. It takes most guys a year to, really get into the scheme, know what they're doing, especially with that Shanahan run game, because it's everybody moving as one unit. It's not 5 separate parts on the offensive line. Hit the weight room for a year, get that NFL strength. So we might see a draft of a first-round pick that doesn't see the field a lot as a rookie, especially if it's an offensive lineman. We saw that with Aaron Banks, who was a top 50 pick a few years ago, and it was like, oh my God, is this guy a complete bust? He wouldn't even suit up. He didn't have a uniform on Sundays. Shows up in year 2, it's like, oh, never mind. They got a starting left guard. He just needed a year to be ready. So it's awesome that the 49ers have a first-round pick. I'm excited because there's been 3 years of not being able to talk about a first-round pick or a second-round pick in some cases. So being able to look at some of these prospects that could be early contributors, that could be potential, who knows, star players for the 49ers, that's been a lot of fun. But I've had a really tough time trying to figure out which of those players that might be there late in round 1 the 49ers are going to swing for. And I do think that their draft plan right now, Larry, is best player available in round 1. And then let's see what happens in round 2 based on what we got, what the league gave us in the first 30 picks to draft at pick 31. Because you could draft a corner. It could be Kool-Aid. It could be Darius Robinson, a big end. It could be Chop Robinson, a speed rusher. It could be an offensive tackle. It could be a number of different players. It could be a center, Jackson Powers-Johnson, Graham Barton. And I think that'll inform us on what's going to happen on day 2 in the draft and beyond. And let the draft come to you. That's the way they should play it. And I feel like they've kind of forced need early in drafts, and it hasn't worked out as well for them. You've hit on Bosa, you hit on Ayuk. They're 2 for 7 right now, really on first round picks as a regime. So let the draft come to you. Draft best player available. I think that's the way to go about this for the 49ers. You mentioned trading up though, which is interesting. And if you feel like you don't have a lot of needs, and maybe you don't have 10, 11 roster spots that rookies are going to make your team anyway, you could go up. So if the 49ers were to get a little bit mobile on day 1 of the draft and move up, what do you think that target would look like?
That's a great question. And I always think trade back. I'm a trade back guy because I really believe I could have 7 bites of the apple in the 7th round. I would do it. Because guess what? I feel confident that I could pick Brock Purdy, and so if you feel like you could really handicap the draft well, why would you not want lots of picks at the end? But there doesn't that's not typically what teams do. I always laugh when people are like, they don't need, they've got 11 picks. They don't have 11 needs. Really? Let's count it. They probably could draft a quarterback. If there was a great running back there, that's one. They definitely probably could take a tight end, maybe a wide receiver, maybe 2 linemen, that's 6, a defensive tackle, that's 7, a defensive end, that's 8, a linebacker, that's 9, a couple safeties, that's 11, a number 1 corner, that's 12. I kind of think, I'm always looking to build the dominant team, the awesome team. So I think they got probably as many as a dozen needs, and I would like to have more picks than less, because any number, and you could get a star player in any round. As far as who are they looking to fall to them, I would say, the of all the tackles, the guy that makes the most sense is Troy Fautanu, because they don't know exactly which spot they're going to need. Banks is a free agent at the end of the year. Trent could retire. Brendel got abused by DJ Reader in the Bengals game. Feliciano is a nice stopgap guy, but he's a stopgap guy. We don't know about Burford. You already mentioned McKivitz, and we all know the struggles that he had, though I do think McKivitz is a little bit better than people think. But my point is, a guy like Fautanu, I think, is ready to play now. He looked great at the combine. He's got great speed. He's nasty, and he can play either guard spot, either tackle spot, or center. So in a lot of ways, I think Fautanu is the guy. And we just saw Chris Forster and Lynch up in Seattle at Husky Pro Day, and a lot of people were suggesting Roger Rosengarten is their target, but I think they want to take another look at Fautanu, because I think there's a chance they would trade up for him. And I think he's the right offensive lineman for them, because I think he's ready to go right now, and he could be utilized at any number of positions. So that's one guy. The other guy I think is the LSU receiver, Brian Thomas. He could fall, and that would be an exceptional player that fell. I guess you could say Brock Bowers, but I can't imagine Bowers is going to fall beyond like 16 or 17. Could they get up that high? But Bowers is, a great player. Truly great player. And he's from Napa. In a lot of ways, he's a George Kittle clone, but he's probably a better receiver. I'll say this. I like what Detroit has done with their new general manager and Dan Campbell. They're not worried about everybody's board. They're not worried about value. They're just identifying great college football players that they have conviction are going to be great pros. And then they're getting in position to pick those guys, and they're picking them. And they get Laporta, and they got the Georgia running back, and they got Brian Branch, and they're getting great players. And they're kind of copying the formula of, I think, the best drafting team in the league right now, and that's the Baltimore Ravens, who under Ozzie Newsome and now Eric DeCosta do the same damn thing. They look for great college football players. They're not worried that Tyler Linderbaum has a little bit shorter arms. That guy was an awesome player at Iowa, so they're just drafting him. They're finding great college players, and they're going to take a chance that they're going to transition to the pros. They're not taking workout warriors. They're not taking guys that lit up the combine but can't play dead. They're not taking guys who were the 3rd best player on their college team. They're taking college stars, and they're projecting them into the NFL as pro stars, and they're not worried about value. And I think that's the route to go. I really believe in that, and I think Detroit's drafting right now as well as anybody, and that's why they're that's why they're coming, man. The Lions are coming. And they've had some incredible, high picks because of how bad they've been, Aiden Hutchinson and so on and so forth, Penei Sewell. But, what they've done the last couple of years in the draft, very, very impressive. And hopefully the Niners, the Niners have been good on day 3, but they have missed a lot. And they've missed on guys they've traded up for, which is even more discouraging. And I just kind of think that Shanahan ought to just defer to his scouts, defer to his personnel people, just acknowledge to himself, hey, man, I'm a great play caller. I'm a great play sequencer. I'm a phenomenal offensive coach. I don't know jack about the draft, and I can't pick my nose. So let's let somebody else do that.
Do you have a feel for what the 49ers are going to do at 31? If you had to guess right now, we're less than a week away from the first round, Larry. Who are the 49ers taking at 31 if you had to guess? You had to put money on one name right now.
To me, it would be probably I think they need a great offensive lineman. And I don't think it matters if that great offensive lineman is a center or guard or a tackle. They can't just take a good offensive lineman that plays the spot they need. They need a great player. That's how you win in this league, when you accumulate great players. I think Tyler Guyton is the guy that's the most like for them. I had a conversation in the locker room late in the year with Trent Williams, and he surprisingly had great knowledge of the tackles in the draft. And we started talking about Guyton, and he's like, yeah, man, that kid's a mauler in the run game. And, Guyton's like 6'7", 325, played the right side. I think to me, he's a plug and play right tackle right away. And maybe 2 years from now, he could be, the replacement for Trent at left tackle. But if to me, he seems like the guy. Now, he might not be there. If you cover the Niners like we do, the one thing is they could have any number of needs, but by the time it gets to draft day, they're looking for a defensive lineman. You know what I mean? Yep. So, in a way, I think, if it was me, I think I would choose between Zach Frazier, the West Virginia center, and a defensive tackle, Johnny Newton, Michael Hall, Rukaroro, something like that. That's what I would be looking for. Greatness on either side of the line of scrimmage. Frazier, the more I watched him, the more I thought, oh my God, this kid's so. Jackson Powers Johnson is a better athlete, but Frazier's the guy. He was 48-0 as a high school wrestler. The guy's a great student. I interviewed his teammate Lee Koba, and he's like, man, this guy just shows up ready to play all the time. Baldy told me that a personnel guy told him that he felt like Zach Frazier could start for their team at center right away. So I kind of view him as a plug and play, dominant inline blocker who's great with leverage, great toughness, great smarts. And Baldy said something to me, Brian, that I thought was interesting. He said, Krug, you don't have a great, and this is an offensive lineman, because you don't have a great offensive line unless you have a great center. And now, granted, he's watching the Eagles and Kelsey, and he's probably impacted by that. But I really kind of agree with him. And if you go look at, some of the greatest teams in the history of the NFL, Steelers had Mike Webster, and the Dolphins had Dwight Stevenson, and the Niners had Jesse Sapolu and Randy Cross, and it's like the Cowboys had Stepnoski, and it's just like you do need a great center. And I think Zach Frazier is a great center. So that would be the guy for me. And if it's not him, I would love to see Michael Hall. I see Bryant Young and Michael Hall. He ran 4.76. He's the fastest defensive tackle in the entire draft. The guy plays with fire. He's one of the youngest prospects in the entire draft. He's only 20. I don't think he turns 21 until August. He's tough. He's physical. He's a great pass rusher. Everybody in today's NFL, it's kind of like the NBA where everybody's got to be able to shoot or they don't guard you. In today's NFL on the D-line, everybody's got to be able to put heat on the quarterback or they sag off you and combo block somebody else. And so, like, if you ever watched, the way teams defend Jonathan Hankins or, some of these guys that have no pass rush ability, these one technique run stuffers, if you can't give any kind of pass rush or push, they don't block you. They just kind of drift off you and combo block the guard, the other tackle or somebody else on the line. So I'm a believer that you've got to be able to rush the passer, and Michael Hall to run 4.76 at 300 pounds. And then he led the nation this year in pass rush win rate among all defensive tackles. I realize there's a lot of people think he's a late second round guy. Maybe you could go Johnny Newton. Baldy loves Johnny Newton. I'm a Michael Hall guy. One of those two guys, in my mind, could easily be the pick.
I love Johnny Newton as well. In my heart of hearts, Niners love D-line. Johnny Newton, if he's there, one of the Robinsons, Chop or Darius Robinson. If I had
Love
to bet,
Darius. Love
I think,
Darius.
yeah, he just controls guys with his hands, long arms, big, powerful hands.
He was the practice player of the week at the Senior Bowl.
Unblockable, swimming over everybody.
Yeah,
controls
monster.
linemen, can set the edge early downs, can move inside and rush. And the 49ers have had great success with those types of players recently. And instead of having like a one and done cast off free agent, draft your own guy that could stay around for a while and play a big time role there. So I like Darius Robinson quite a bit. I think it's fascinating that you brought up two offensive linemen that couldn't be more different in Zach Frazier, who's leverage king, flat back, ready to play early, super high floor, to Tyler Guyton. And someone made a joke that I was going to push back on him. I'm not the biggest fan of Tyler Guyton. I think he's more of a project. He's already 6'7". He plays a little high. He worries the heck out of me. If I'm looking for a project, I would much rather swing for Mims, who might not get to 31 anyway, or the BYU kids. Kingsley Suamataia is my guy, just because I think he can stick at tackle, has all the goods, all the things you're looking for, can get out on the move, can hit people. And I think it's just technique that he needs to work on. And he is a project as well. But he's got.
I like him too. Somebody told me he was 285, and I'm looking at him and I'm thinking, wow, this guy, looks pretty impressive, but he's 285. And then all of a sudden I look up and they say, he's 325. And at 325, he looks like a guy who's about 280, 285. That's a great, to me, that's a great indicator. When you look like a guy who's 270, 280, but you're really 325, that means you naturally carry that weight around. He's impressive to me. Mims is he's the prototype. I just worry about guys, when you love football, you find a way to get in the game. When you don't love football, you find a way to get out of the game. It worries me that a guy's got 8 starts. That worries me. But I mean, his physical prototype, in a lot of ways, he's kind of like the guy the Steelers drafted. He just, thin waist, long arms, perfect physical prototype for the tackle spot. But I'll tell you, I kind of like the deeper guys in this draft. I would definitely go D-line over O-line early if I was going tackle, because I love Javon Foster from Missouri, who, has got really, really strong hands. And he's played right tackle and left tackle, and he's got really long arms, and he's got the frame to put on about 10 more pounds, and he's already about 320. And to me, he's a monster. I love J.C. Latham. Some people, I've got a buddy of mine who says, Krug, he's fool's gold. He's going to be a guard. But to me, he looks like a 15-year starter as a right tackle. So I'd be very intrigued by Latham. But I kind of like Garrett Greenfield, who I believe set the combine record for vertical for an offensive lineman. Garrett Greenfield, let me see, I have it here in my notes. Garrett Greenfield had like a 37.5-inch vertical, 38.5-inch vertical at 6'5", 311 pounds. 38.5-inch vertical. That's the combine record. And him and Mason McCormick for the South Dakota State Jackrabbits, those guys played next to each other. I'd like to have them both. I think McCormick's a badass, and I think Greenfield's a steal. I love both those guys, and they're probably going to be Mason McCormick's probably a 4th-round pick, and Greenfield's probably a 5th or a 6th-round pick.
My question for those late, and we're getting into it. Let's get into those sleepers here. So 49ers go D-line early. By the way, Michael Hall, I like a lot. My strategy for the 49ers, by the way, just I want to get it on record to you, Krueger, before next week, is to stay put at 31, even maybe move back a few spots, and be mobile upward on day 2, 2nd round. Can you get, say, Johnny Newton and then move up for an offensive lineman? Get Suamataia in round 2 in the top 50, moving up from 63, or move up to get into the top 75 from the 3rd round pick and hit 3 top 75 players. That's my strategy for the 49ers, looking at how things might fall in the draft. But let's say they do not draft an offensive lineman early. And do you think the Blake Fishers of the world and the the Rosengarten, Kuiper had Rosengarten going at 31. I think Rosengarten's a 2nd or 3rd round guy. You mentioned Foster. There's the tackle Christian Jones, right, from Texas.
He looked great in the one-on-ones in Mobile. I mean, he won almost all those reps, and yeah, he looked good.
My question on those guys, and we saw it with a guy like Spencer Burford, where you look, he's like, he's athletic, he's got long enough arms, he was a college tackle, he's probably an NFL tackle, and they're like, nope, straight to guard. So many of these guys are going to get pushed straight to guard in the NFL. My question on these guys later is, it feels like it falls off with the true NFL offensive tackles in this draft, and the depth is so deep at guard and center. Are the Fosters and the Jones and Fishers, are these guys going to stick at tackle in the NFL is my question.
Well, it's a case-by-case situation for sure. I think some are and some aren't. I mean, I think Foster for sure is going to play tackle. I love the footwork. I love the arm length. I really think he's a special player. As far as, across the board, the kid from Texas may or may not stay there. Blake Fisher, I think, is going to stay at tackle. Another guy that, Caden Wallace might be a guard from Penn State. They looked at him. Ladarius Henderson might be a guard. I really like him, by the way. He started at ASU and finished at Michigan. And, man, the way he could pull out and get in front of the running back Corum in the national championship game in the college football playoff, I thought Ladarius Henderson looked incredible. I mean, the way he moved at 6'4", 310. But, yeah, I mean, it's – I kind of like even later, I kind of like the Maryland kid, Gottlieb Ayadazi. He's like 6'4", 310, another guy who moves really, really well. And then, as far Frank Crum, the ginger from Wyoming.
Yeah, I was going to bring up Frank Crum. He's like this year's day 3 Mike McGlinchey, right? 6'8", athletic, can get out on the run and block a little bit, and is definitely a tackle with his height in the NFL.
Yeah. There's another guy you got to look at. His name's Aneem Donkwa, and he plays for Howard, and he's 6'8", 362. Now, I don't know if he's going to fit the Niners scheme, but he reminds me a lot of Dawan Jones. A lot of Dawan Jones. He's got the Dawan Jones build. This guy's monstrous. So, I mean, there's good prospects. It's all about how much can you develop your guy. Can your offensive line coach develop these guys, and then how severe your need is. I mean, yeah, if you said who's a tackle, well, Alt's a tackle, Fuaga's a tackle, Fashanu's a tackle, Latham, I think, is a tackle, Fatanu's a tackle, Mims is a tackle, Guyton's a tackle, and then how do you pronounce Sumatea?
It's Suamataia is how you're supposed to pronounce it.
Suamataia.
Yeah,
he's a tackle. Patrick Paul is high cut from Houston, but he's a tackle. Amagaji from Yale. He's a tackle.
I don't know what to do with him because it's hard.
Quad injury this year.
Tape. Of course, he's dominating his competition there, but he didn't get a chance because of that quad injury to compete at the Senior Bowl. He hasn't had a chance to work out yet. The fact that injury is still not healed up, because that's something that happened midway through the season. Maybe he's your sleeper just because he's got all the traits, but you're just gonna have to redshirt him and see what you get. But he's got all the traits you're looking for in a starting NFL tackle.
Oh, he's got like 86-inch reach across the board as far as wingspan. He's amazing, but he's probably a 4th-round pick. It really depends. I think the way the Niners, by re-signing Colton McKivitz, they basically allowed themselves to take any kind of tackle they want. If they feel like a guy's got potential, they can take him and, go long-term with him. They don't have to go with the guy who's ready to go right now. The guy that I'm a little nervous about would be Jordan Morgan. I think his upside's a little limited. Like, I would be really disappointed if the Niners traded up 2 or 3 spots and took Jordan Morgan. To me, that's just too safe. Too safe.
He's so safe. He's an easy watch. He's a smooth mover. His arm length is not only shy of ideal at 34 for a tackle, but shy of acceptable, under 33 inches, and you just don't see many guys get a shot. And he's not really a knock you back type of player that you project into guard and being just a real ass kicker there either. So he's a player that I like if he falls to the right spot and you see where he ends up playing for you. But if you're trying to force him into tackle early in the 1st round, yeah, I'm out on that pick as well.
I'm not crazy about Morgan. I know there's a lot of people that really like him. I just see, just kind of, a guy. I don't think he's. I know you could, if you had to play, if you didn't have McKivitz and you needed someone to play right away, maybe he'd be attractive. But to me, if you're going to go tackle, the arm length matters. I mean, certain measurements matter for certain positions. The geometry of the game with all these speed rushers, you got to have a long arm tackle. I mean, the guy that they drafted last year out of Hawaii that I really liked, Ilm Manning, he played left tackle and played it well. They didn't give him the chance to play left tackle or play tackle at all because he had 32.5-inch arms.
Yep. You just don't get the shot. You're immediately day one a guard in the NFL if you're sub 33. It's just it's the way they treat you. You're like a leper. You mentioned the South Dakota State right tackle. It was Greenfield. And then he was a right tackle, right? Because then you had McCormick, who was the right guard.
Well, here's the thing about Greenfield that's so intriguing. He has 31 career starts at left tackle. He's got 24 career starts at right tackle. So that's that. What I like too is when I read the Dane Brugler report on him, and Brugler goes so freaking deep, it's scary.
I love the beast. It's worth everybody go out and subscribe to The Athletic. It's worth just to get the beast. It's worth the entire year's subscription to The Athletic.
Brugler's the kind of guy I'd be like, Greenfield's younger sister quit brownies in the fourth grade because they had car problems. But I mean, this guy has so much but what I love about Greenfield is in that report, 38.5-inch vertical, which is crazy. Mean streak. I was like a mean streak in my offensive lineman. To me, a mean streak in your offensive lineman means everything. So I'm a big Greenfield fan, and I think he's a perfect swing tackle. And I would take, to me, if I could do it the way I want to do it, I'd go other positions early and try to see if I could get Javon Foster and Greenfield later. And if I could get both of them, I'd like to get both of them.
Just, go defensive line in round one and then draft like 4 offensive linemen and let them fight for that job, right? Get a center, a guard, a tackle, some combo players, and let them. By the way, how good was South Dakota State?
I know. They won the national championship.
And apparently they got a center, which is the reason McCormick played guard, is because they got another guy who's a center who's better than both of them, is going to be in the draft next year.
I didn't watch a lot of South Dakota State, games. I watched some of the highlights of their guys. McCormick is nasty, and he went to the combine and had a great workout. And I'll tell you this, their running back is big time. Isaiah Davis. I mean, I'd be happy with Greenfield, McCormick, and Isaiah Davis. Could you imagine if the Niners drafted 3 guys from South Dakota State?
North Dakota State didn't work out, so they'll go to the rival. The Jackrabbits go South Dakota State in this draft and don't have to spend 3 first-round picks on them.
You know who was from South Dakota State last year? Was the Green Bay tight end Tucker Kraft.
Oh, right. Yeah.
And he was awesome. I mean, he is awesome. In fact, to me, that's a major concern going forward, is the fact that they got Musgrave out of Oregon State and that guy out of South Dakota State. Those 2 tight ends are awesome, and they're both in Green Bay, trying to keep the Niners from going to the Super Bowl. I think Green Bay is going to be a whole lot better next year.
Speaking of small school sleepers, there's a name that the 49ers brought in for a 30 visit who's not even a sleeper anymore, I guess, because people are talking about him like he's going to be a first-round player now. That's Western Michigan's Marshawn Nealon, defensive lineman, 5th-year senior, 6'3", 267. He was awesome in workouts. I saw a tight player on film when I watched Marshawn Nealon. I was a little disappointed, to be honest with you, based on the hype he's been getting recently, based on his combine workout numbers. His agilities were awesome. He can't turn the corner. He's really tight. What do you think of Marshawn Nealon? Do you think he might be a dark horse for the 49ers at 31 even?
No, I don't. I saw what you saw. I saw a guy that looked really tight. He didn't look like he was bendy or this is the NFL, man. You gotta have real, you got to have the ability to flatten to the quarterback. It takes a special athlete. Back in the day, guys like House Ballard used to play tackle. Now, guys who play tackle are like jumbo ballerinas. These guys have great feet. So, you got to have unbelievable bend and be able to flatten to the quarterback and no wasted steps. Now, the Niners do like bigger defensive ends in the wide nine to set the edge. And this is a draft where, Jonah Ellis is amazing from Utah, but he's 250, and he's got this crazy spin move. He can spin inside, he can spin outside. He's amazing. But is he too small? Is he too small for what they do? And Muhammad Kamara is one of my favorite guys. He's 6'1", 250. Is he too small? So there's a lot, Xavier Thomas from Clemson, another guy. He's about 250 pounds. So I'm not sure. Javon Solomon was one of the great sack masters in all of college football this year for Troy. He's like 6'1", 250. So are they going to go with those guys? To me, some of the best edge rushers in this class are smaller guys. A lot of people like Chop Robinson. I think Chop Robinson has great workout numbers, but to me, I kind of like Adisa Isaac more than Chop Robinson, and they played on the same line.
Adisa Isaac's getting some late hype as well. 6'4", 247. Brugler has him as a second, third round pick. So that'd be prime in the neighborhood where the 49ers are selecting late in round 2. He's got long arms. He's got that linear profile for an outside speed sort of a rusher. The Chop thing is interesting because the production wasn't there, but I put on the tape and he's a dynamic player and he's
a dynamic athlete for sure.
He's up to the challenge in the run game. He's not like a finesse guy, even though he's 6'3", 254. Crazy get off. I would love Chop Robinson at 31. I think he's gonna be long gone. I think a team's gonna draft those traits, especially a team that might want more of a stand-up rusher. But he's physical despite his size. He's just not the biggest guy, so he's not gonna be imposing in the run game, but he will battle in the run game, and he'll flash down the line and collapse things. And he's more of a game wrecker than his stats would lead you to believe. So I do like Chop Robinson quite a bit, and I think he would have much more statistic success in the NFL. And I don't know what's going on with Penn State. They had Jason Oweh a few years ago,
right? Who was called something else.
He had 0 sacks. Odafe Oweh is what he goes by now. He had 0 sacks in college. He's been a better pro. They had Micah Parsons playing off-ball linebacker, and he goes to the NFL. Turns out he's the best pass rusher in the league. So
he was, though, projected as like a top 5 player, and he just had a ugly incident on campus there that where they attacked another guy and this and that. And there are a lot of teams in the league didn't draft Parsons. Like he fell because of that. He didn't even fall that far, but he was supposed to be a top 5 guy coming into the year. He was a super blue chipper. But you're right. I mean, he's like a defensive end now, and you looked at him as almost like an inside backer. Like a stack backer there.
Easter Gross Matos, he was raw coming out of Penn State. He was like, what are they? They're not teaching these guys how to get after the quarterback at that school. It's pretty wild. So that's why I've got some hope for Chop Robinson. I would absolutely be happy with that pick at 31. Just because
I'll tell you, the guy that I loved, Brian, died the other day. AJ Simon, Amatrell Simon for Albany. He was one of the sleeper guys. This guy was weighing 267 pounds and was running 4.59. And he had a massive heart attack and died.
I didn't hear that story. Al Simon out of Albany.
Out of Albany. This was one of the sleepers. I actually had to have my son edit him out of the video because he died. I mean, it was tragic. I mean, this guy's story was amazing. He was from Tobyhanna, Pennsylvania, and had some injuries in high school. Didn't get heavily recruited. Wound up at Albany. Transferred, he spent 2 years. I think he played somewhere else first. He played at Bloomsburg, PA for 4 years. He was a 6-year player, then played 2 years at Albany, led Albany with 21.5 tackles for loss and 74 pressures. And the ridiculous strength. He had 34 reps of 225, and he ran 4.59 with a 1.57 10-yard split. He was first team all conference. And I thought this guy was going to be, You could even still probably find his highlights on Twitter. I mean, this guy was just absolutely caving in big offensive linemen, bull rushing him, and just waltzing him back into the quarterback. You could actually see the 34 reps at 225 strength that he possessed. And sadly, he had a massive heart attack and died. So very tragic.
Man, that's rough. Thoughts out to Al Simon's family. That's a bummer. It makes football feel real small when that happens that quickly to a guy who's, got everything in front of him, trying to get drafted by an NFL team.
Yeah, I mean, right on the verge of your dream, and have it all go away. That's so sad.
You mentioned a lot of pass rushers there that aren't very big, and I'm looking at the defensive tackles. The college football game is just not giving the NFL very many big people on the defensive line. So I feel like teams have to kind of force those up. You look at the defensive tackles, especially, there's so many guys that are sub 6'2", sub 300 pounds that are those undersized 3-tech pass rushers. Then you get Tavondre Sweat, who was playing at 390 apparently, and had to get down to 366 just in time for the combine. He gets a DUI. There's no size on the defensive line. So I think that's maybe why, Darius Robinson, Marshawn Nealon, some of these bigger ends are going to get forced up the board a little bit. Guys got to take them early because there's just no size out there on the defensive line. And you still got to be big, and you still got to stop the run first in the NFL.
Here's the thing, too. It's like kind of debatable with the Niners. What is their real need? They have Hargrave, but he's a pass rusher. They've missed DJ Jones since the day they let him walk out to Denver. Tavondre's got, he's just so broad. I mean, do they need a, kind of a 3-technique, 1-gap penetrator type and think pass rush, and play the run on the way to the quarterback? Or do they need that 1-technique monster like a Tavondre Sweat, like Jackson McKinney for A&M, like Jordan Jefferson for LSU, Evan Anderson, who they worked out from Florida Atlantic, who's 6'4", 330. Do they need that monster 1 technique that doesn't rush the passer? Or do they need, another guy who can go after and hunt quarterbacks from the inside like a Michael Hall? That's kind of the question. It's like, I'm not real. There's all kinds of different guys. Byron Murphy is a pass rusher. Newton's got really good movement skills. I was amazed when I saw Braden Fisk at the combine, and then I watched the film, and you can see the pass rush ability. To me, the most impressive guy of all of the defensive linemen was the Clemson kid, Rook Ororo. At 6'4", 295, he's from Lagos. He's really smart. He's really works hard. He's a little raw. He's going to need some development. But I'm telling you, 2 years from now, I think Ororo might be the best defensive tackle. And that's the guy, to me, it's like if they were, I would have no problem with them taking him at 31. Now, I know a lot of people say he's going to go much later than that, but I think there's a bunch of teams in the NFL that love that kid. And if you watch him on film, I think he wore 33 or 32. He looks kind of funky when you see somebody almost 300 pounds.
Yeah, it's a bad number.
30. Yeah, it's a weird number, but this guy's movement ability is off the charts, and he's really, really good. So, I mean, I love Michael Hall. I think he's ready to go now. But as far as upside play, man, Rook Ororo is just crazy, crazy athletic.
Yeah, see, that's my plan. I want to get 2 of those guys. I want to draft some best player available at 31, come back up in the second round, then get Michael Hall, get Rosengarten at that point, double up there with a couple of picks inside the top 50 or so. That would be my strategy for the NFL.
I'll tell you another guy who's like kind of a blue collar day 3. This guy's tough as hell. I don't know how much you watch of Toledo, and Quinyon Mitchell was awesome this year at Toledo. So I watched them in the bowl game this year. They went up against, I think, Wyoming. It was the what's it called? The bowl game where they used the announcers from Barstool. It was really a unique game to watch. But there's a guy named Judge Culpepper for Toledo Gigantic, 6'3", 295 barroom brawler on that front for Toledo. Man,
Great
he
name.
was
That's a fake created name in Madden, right? When you get the auto
Judge
create
Culpepper.
names. Yeah.
Judge Culpepper. I'll tell you the sleeper, and this is one of the guys I'm absolutely super excited about. And this is a deep sleeper. This guy's such a sleeper that he was not in the the draft guide that we talked about, the Beast. He didn't even make it into the Beast.
What? Oh, you are the deepest of sleepers. Like you're Rip Van Winkle if you're not in the Beast, because there's 1,000 prospects in the Beast.
This guy's name is you got to go look this kid up. His name
Okay.
and on YouTube. His name is Elijah Chapman, and he's 6 feet 285 from Shreveport, Louisiana. Plays for SMU. Wears number 40. This kid is awesome. I mean, I want this kid on the team. I don't care if he's the backup fullback. I don't care what he does. This is an amazing player. Super strong. Benches 485, 42 reps of 225. Back squats 615. Power cleans 335. Unbelievable motor. Locates the ball. Plays the game on his feet. Excellent in pursuit. He's not a two-gapper. He's an undersized guy. He's a one-gap penetrator. But, I mean, you can see this kid interviewed. He's a ridiculous athlete. And I saw him in the Shrine game maybe, and I saw him earlier in the year at SMU. Unbelievable.
Yeah.
Great instincts, incredible speed, 5.5 sacks. He's a kid from Shreveport, Louisiana, and he just wins at the point of attack all the time. I mean, you got to play him in a rotation. He's more like a Givens type as far as he's a kind of a sawed-off, one-gap penetrator, get up the field guy. But this is one of the great athletes in the draft, and nobody's got him on the board.
Fullback, yeah, like Ricard from Baltimore.
Right. This guy's, and then there's limits to how much weight he's going to be able to put on. But even at 6, 6 feet, whatever, 285, this guy's a monster, absolute monster. You got to check him out.
Judge Culpepper is the son of the famous quarterback who played with John Lynch, apparently. So that's why the Culpepper name rings out there, if that's true.
Not Dante Culpepper.
It's not.
No.
Oh, here we go. Wait, was there a Brad Culpepper?
Yeah, there was. Yeah, there was.
Okay.
This kid's kind of a throwback. He's a Tampa, Florida kid. So yeah, he probably is. Let me see him. I don't have that information in front of me. He's graduated with a degree in university studies. He's working on a second degree. Hopes to attend law school one day. Full name is Judge Broward Culpepper, son of Monica and Brad Culpepper.
There you go. Great knowledge. I mean, coming strong RDC in the chat with that Brad Culpepper knowledge from this
guy's a brawler, man. He's tough and he's fast and he moves. I mean, you'd love this kid. He plays.
That's fantastic stuff. Any other sleepers you got? Wide receiver, I feel like that's the sleeper position every year. We were asked in the chat earlier about Anthony Gold, who's a big-time return guy. I think the 49ers do still need
Oregon
to. Talking about needs, they got to replace Ray McLeod. Maybe that's Ronnie Bell. Maybe that's somebody in the draft, somebody who can come in and catch 20 passes and return kicks and return punts, and that kick return value might be higher than ever right now this year with the new rules.
Yeah, I love this kid, David White from Western Carolina. He absolutely gave the DBs fits in the practices leading up to, I think, the Hula Bowl, or maybe it was the Shrine. He's 6'4", 200 pounds this year. He's raw, but unbelievable footwork and route running at 6'4", 200 pounds. This kid's a great athlete. Now, he needs work. Like, he needs refinement in and out of his breaks. He's not ready to go right now, but he as
Well, there we go. We lost Larry. Larry bailed out on us. He must have had a heart out. That's okay. If he jumps back in, we'll get back to him. But I was about to let him go anywhere. We're hitting about an hour on this stream, and that's a good amount of time. Love hearing from Larry. Love hearing the sleepers from the Scout's Eye. Big thanks to Larry Krueger for joining me here on OT with BP. Make sure you guys are subscribed up here to the new channel. Hit the like button, hit the thumbs up, hit the subscribe. Make sure you hit the notification bell as well so you know when we go live. We're going to be going live a lot on this channel, talking a lot of draft and specifically going live during the draft with my Locked On 49ers co-host Eric Crocker. And then, of course, we're going to have episodes of Locked On 49ers following all of the 49ers draft picks as we do every single day on the Locked On Podcast Network. So make sure you're subscribed up there. You can also find me talking about the entire NFL on the Peacock and Williamson NFL show daily on the Locked On Podcast Network. My co-host, Matt Williamson, another former NFL scout. I think Larry and Matt Williamson would get along just fine. So thanks again to Larry Krueger for jumping on the channel, talking late round sleepers for the San Francisco 49ers. The draft is less than 1 week away. I'm so pumped for it. Got a first round pick, got a second round pick. This is awesome. So make sure you are tuned in here, and we will have all the coverage for you pre-draft, post-draft, and all season long on OT with BP. And we'll talk to you next time right here on OT with BP.